Welcome everyone. This is our first session of Classic Coaches Online, bringing you some masterclasses from classic coaches both in Australia and around the world. Very lucky tonight to have Waratahs Academy and Australian Under-20 coach Shannon Fraser with us. Welcome, Shannon.
Good to be here, Greg. Good to be talking footy. Isolated at home, of course, but good to be talking some footy.
Fantastic. For those that you don't know, Shannon and I go way back with coaching, both in New South Wales and Fiji. So if there's a bit of banter, we apologise. But apart from that, we might start with your rugby journey, Shannon, and where you played, if you did play, and what your local club was growing up.
Well, geez, I was a bit of a battler as a player. I started my journey on the dark side, actually, at St Gregory's College in Campbelltown as a rugby league disciple. Before I guess I saw the light and followed a few friends down the hill and into the Campbelltown Harlequins. So I played a lot of my juniors, and obviously that took me into the city and had with my first, I guess, rugby coaching job as a trainee development officer in Western Sydney in 1998. Took me to the Parramatta Two Blues Club. I had a number of years there. So it's a long time ago. Sorry?
You're a yappy halfback, weren't you?
I talked probably better than I played, no doubt. And that probably led me into my coaching career, where I talk a lot better than I actually perform.
Well, on that, mate, obviously this series is predominantly for coaches. Was there a coach that had a particular influence on you, either as a player or in your coaching journey coming through?
Oh, probably as a player a long time ago. I mean, a lot of my junior coaches back at the Harlequins, the Terry Bradburys of the world, the Tony Cartwrights, certainly instilled a passion very early on as a leaguey coming across. For me to sort of really jump onto rugby as a lifestyle, as a chosen sport. Coaches probably more recently, I guess, within my coaching journey. I've been blessed to have the capacity to be in the same space at times with the Scott Wisemantles, the Les Kissers, Ewan McKenzie's, Eddie Joneses of the world. So, and they've always been extremely generous with their time. As a young aspirational coach, navigating his way through the pathway from development officer into coach ed, into academy, and obviously and then into various professional teams. They've always been very, very generous with their time, and I think I've picked up little things from them along the way, which I'm forever grateful. More recently, obviously the coaches in around the New South Wales system have been outstanding, and probably the most enjoyable, I guess, experience I've had in my short or my most recent coaching is with the junior Wallabies, and I think sort of the Jason Gilmores, the Rory Murphys, and the Benny Mowens in that setup there have been fantastic, I guess, and really engaging, and you like to learn a lot. You like to you like to pull as much as you can and give as much as you can. So they're really positive environments.
Oh, great, and that's the whole purpose of this series, and is giving our coaches right across New South Wales the opportunity to learn, even if it's just a little bit each session that we do with these classic coaches. And I'll let you get into it. Tonight, I know you're going to do a presentation for us on tackle contest. And you've got some stuff prepared, which is great. So what we're going to do is Shannon's going to do his presentation, and then we're going to finish with some questions that have been pre-prepared and delivered to us from coaches around the state. So over to you, Shan.
No, fantastic. I'll just see how I go with sharing my screen here.
I've got it here, mate.
You've got it?
Yep.
We're good? Good to go?
Yeah, we're good to go, mate.
Fantastic. So what I thought I'd do today is just do a little presentation. It's not too in depth, and I've tried to keep in the middle of the road a little bit in relation to some of the topics around the tackle contest, without getting too pushed down one particular team that does it a certain way. Try to stay in the middle of the road just to allow, I guess, the coaches, you guys listening and watching to sort of take a little bit on and obviously then apply it to your own environment. So thought we'd do tackle contest. It's an area that touches on pretty much every coach. If you're a defence coach or an attack coach, ultimately the tackle contest is ingrained in your business. Set piece and forwards coaches, backline coaches, and obviously skills coaches. So thought I'd just touch on that today, and we'll talk through things we want to get out of it. Some of the objectives is one, defining what tackle contest is. Look at the technical aspects to it, the roles specific to the tackle contest, and look at the tactical implications. So how do you apply a strategy to your tackle contest to enhance your team's performance? And then look at some effective training to increase that performance. What we can do in around our training. We're all strapped for time. We all only get small components, and whether it's a Tuesday, Thursday night, or you're in a professional system, I guess, and you're battling for minutes with a lot of other coaches, you don't get a lot of time. So it's important that we make the most of the bits we get. And then I guess looking at the end, so we don't end up too far down the road with a poor tackle contest, is how do we evaluate the effectiveness of it within our performance? So I've got some clips to go through as well, but just start off with a real clear and simple, my understanding, I guess, of this term tackle contest. So, we refer to it as a breakdown. It can turn into a ruck. You've got tackle law, you've got ruck law. They differ. You've obviously got maul law. So for me, looking at this area of the game, it's the immediate actions after a ball carrier is in contact with the tackler. So, from both sides, whether it's the ball carrier and the attacking side, or whether it's a defensive team, and looking at what the actions of those immediate players are in relation to a contest. Are we going to retain the ball? Are we going to contest the ball to regain it? So, most of the time, it turns into a ruck. So ruck law comes in, and obviously we operate within the ruck law. But sometimes it doesn't. And I guess the more effective our tackle contest can become, and that's our contest before it becomes a ruck, the more effective we can be within that on both sides of the ball, I guess the more rucks we can avoid. Now that strength in one way, particularly from an attack perspective, keep momentum of the ball, you keep the ball alive, and whatnot. But there's also going to be that little bit of a double-edged sword that ruck gives you offside law. So again, that then ties into what our strategy is. How do we want to create offsides at times during our attack? Now, what I won't cover in here, I'll stick strictly to the tackle contest, to the arriving players around the ball carrier and the tackler. What I won't do is focus too heavily on the ball carrier or the attack component, or the defence and the tackler. Now, ultimately, as we all know, they're going to pretty much, the effectiveness of those two will have a major impact on the effectiveness of our tackle contest. Our ball carry goes well, and we win the collision, and we fight for metres, and we win the gain line. It makes our retaining possession a lot easier. And obviously, on the flip side, if our tackle is dominant and we win the collision and we win that space, well, it opens up opportunities for jackals and a lot of pressure into that tackle area. I won't go into that at the moment, but just want to acknowledge that is a major part of what we see within the tackle contest effectiveness. I'll try not to flip from side to side. I'll stick to the attack side, then we'll do some attack clips, and then I'll stick to the defensive side and we'll do some defensive clips before we talk about the whole training of it. But with the ball in hand now, and looking at our tackle contest with the ball, and looking at our support roles in there now, so the terminology I've thrown out here is just mine, and that I've been using within recent teams that I've been involved in. So, what you call these, bullet ball, whether you call it first arriving, second arriving, primary, secondary, whatever terminology you have will be unique to your setup and your team. But I think what's important is that we allocate clear roles for the arriving players, first and second and third and fourth, if that's part of our strategy. Clear roles, but also technically, what are we looking for out of those roles? So I refer to them as bullet and ball, but bullet is our first arriving player, and the objective of the bullet or our first arriving player is to deny the opportunity of a contest. So remember, we've got the ball. A ball carrier's done a job. I'm the first arriving. I want to deny the opportunity for a contest. We don't want to get into a situation where we invite the defensive team to compete for our ball. So it's really important that we get accuracy in that role. The things that are really important within that role is speed. Okay, getting there really quickly. So in many instances, that's arriving before the tackle's finished. It's not a matter of that clean. I make a tackle, we fall to the ground, we then see two arriving players. We from an attack perspective at the tackle contest, we want it to be over before it begins. So we want our first arrival, we want our bullet to be in there before the tackle is complete. And I've got there the roles. Obviously, latch early. If we can get onto that ball carrier nice and early, or get onto the tackler, and take the tackler away nice and early and be effective in that tackle space, we deny opposition looking at the ball and competing for it. And also, if there's no contest, the ripple effect to that is we start to get quick ball, and you sort of know that if you play with quick ball, the referred pressure from every tackle contest builds. And so after 2 or 3 phases of really quick ball, you start to get defence really stretched, really under stress, and defensive teams will make errors when they're stressed. So the latch is one. Get in really early, get nice and early, and get onto that ball carrier as quick as you can.
Shannon,
second thing is there. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say on that. In your experience, mate, do you find that when you do that well in games, other teams almost lose interest in contesting at the breakdown?
Yeah, I think they do. I think some teams will, and it also depends on the zone that you're in, because some teams won't contest the tackle area in certain zones of the field. You've got to be aware of that when you're looking at your attack. So that's certainly one thing. But the other thing is they start to then get a little frustrated with it, and they start to look at ways to sort of try to manipulate it. And that's when opposition can start to take some shortcuts in there. And you can get some penalties out of it, sort of being frustrated, arriving late, and you see when opposition start to bury heads into dead rucks, they start flying in on the side. That's just a little bit of frustration coming out from the fact that every time there's a tackle, the attacking team is denying the opposition a contest. In our game, one of the greats of our game is that every possession is contestable. So I think I see your point there, Greg, and I certainly think that's something that you need to be aware of. If teams do just sit and fan, obviously you've got to address that within your attack, and things like stop going wide under those instances, because the defensive line will have width. So then it's about kind of, okay, our strategy there changes to be playing quite direct and get straight in behind them to narrow those lines again. So it's something it's that tactical element to implementing your tackle contest strategy.
Yeah, I guess by getting them to change the way that they would usually defend, you've already had your win.
Absolutely, yeah. If you're smart enough to have the ability to recognise it or preempt it, and you can go in and say, this is what we hope they'll do, and if they do it, we've got a strategy. And that's going in with multiple plans, which is, at the higher levels, that's something that's pretty important. Just
keep going. I just thought I'd raise it.
Yeah, no, jump on in, Greg. You've been doing it for years in my coaching, so keep going. So the second area to that latch is obviously then it's to target that space above. If you are there when a little bit late. One key area that for me is important is that you target that space above the ball. Because there's going to be a lot of movement in that zone, I've got a couple of clips to show. Because there's going to be a lot of movement in that zone, sometimes we can be preoccupied with just trying to target a man that really may not have much of an effect on the ball. And so, again, that invites the second person from the defensive team to come into that contest. So I think what's really important is if we can't latch early, we target that space directly above that ball with our bullet, okay, and we work at a really good height. So it's not about just getting there. It's about actually getting at a nice, low working height, 40-odd centimetres above the ball, and take any threats that are looking to get there. the bullet for me is not about sitting on the ball. It's about taking threats past the ball. So getting in there, getting that working height, and then looking to sort of preempt anyone arriving and sort of meet them beyond the ball. The second arriving player, and if the first guy's done a really clean job, the second job's quite easy. If the first guy misses his mark, well, then you have the second arriving player starting to have to clean things up. And if you've got the second guy cleaning things up, ultimately your tackle contest recycle speed is going to start to extend, 4, 5, 6 seconds. And we all know slow ruck speed advantages the defensive team more than anyone. So ideally we want to keep that ball playable, available within 2 to 3 seconds to play, at your choice, I guess. So second arriving player, we call it ball because the focus is there to get onto the ball and sit on the ball. The objective there is to follow the bullet in at the same height. And that's a really key point when we're doing our technical area to it, is you need to follow in and you need to accelerate into that same height. You take the space above the ball. If anyone's going to come to look to steal your ball, they've got to get into that space. Okay, so again, having a real discipline on our lines and our tracking into that contest at a nice working height and at the ball. The ball supported can't be a dead man in the ruck. So we're not looking for guys to lock on and head down and eyes down. We're actually looking at guys to come in with that real threat. Okay, nice strong position, head up, ready to go. If anyone comes in, we're there to really nail them early. Okay, so being that real proactive shape that we can meet opposition if they want to come and counter. And that's, as we sort of spoke there a second ago, that's that when teams get frustrated with that, with not having contests, it's sometimes that second player that will get a fair bit of heat. Guys wanting to come in to counter ruck because they're getting frustrated that their phases aren't becoming contestable. So it's really important that he's in a nice strong position and he's not being knocked back over his own ball and then causing problems to the halfback who ultimately wants clean possession. If there's no further threats that come into that, well, the ball, he sits on that ball, sits in there nice and strong, ball at his heels, right over, bum right over the ball. And then particular teams might have strategies about tapping that player and he steps forward on the pass, or whether the halfback's got the capability to get that ball out cleanly. But he can't have chest over ball because that makes it obviously too difficult for the 9 to be digging in, and we want clean front foot ball. That ball's got to be available. So where he sits and where he holds is an important area. One point across both of those that I'll just make down the bottom there is around trapping defenders. And it's something that we see in a lot of our training where we do a lot of ruck drills and we do a lot of hits on bags and we do a lot of hitting of players in around that collision area. And we would just release them back in the defensive line. I think the idea there is if we're going to take a man, if we're going to enter that tackle contest area and we're going to clean a man out, then we've got to make sure that we stay with him for a second or two. We've got to stay with him till that ball's cleared, within reason. And ultimately we don't want to be 3 metres out the back of the ruck holding onto a player. That's not what we mean. But if we hit a bloke, we don't let him roll out of the ruck and get up and join the defensive line while we sit in the ruck. Attack defence, it's a game of numbers. From an attack perspective, we're looking for quick ball and to find space in the defensive line. So we don't need them having players released into that D line really quickly. So terminology I've used in the past, just trapping players into that collision. So we get in there, we hit nice and hard, low working height. Okay, and we trap guys in there. Ball's gone within 2 seconds, and then we know who's defending us. We don't have any surprises with guys coming out late. So I'll just quickly go to some clips on this, and I hope these come across clear enough. But I'll slow it down where it gets a bit clearer. So just look at a couple of examples here, I guess, of an early latch. We've got 2 arriving players really in close. The tackle's not complete yet, and we've got from the Crusaders' perspective here, who have a very clean tackle contest. We have 2 arriving players in really, really early. So you see as we play this through, okay, what that says straight away is not worth contesting. So we've cut the contest out of that straight away by having a nice, strong early arriver. So players on the ball carrier before the tackle's made, a little latch. Good, strong shape, nice working height, chin off chest. So there's no counter ruck threats there at all. Go to the next one. Similar thing. Okay. Really early in. Okay. not inviting anybody to come into that shape there at all. So these ones not quite the latch, okay, just a little bit earlier than the D, again, showing that picture to the defensive line. There's no point putting a dead body into there. So, again, ball is presented really cleanly, really quickly. Another example, latch on nice and early, okay, into that space. We see the decision there from CT, not interested in that ruck at all, okay, because it's already clean ball. So a couple of really good examples there of guys getting in early. Again, another example here, looking at that bullet arriver. We've got Debsy here just looking at that bullet arriver. And I just want to take note on this one. It's just about that excellent working height, okay, and that he's not distracted by any of the arriving or the noise around him or the shapes that are around him. What he is he's just really, really focused on being in around that ball. Ball's just under here. He's working in that 40 centimetres above the ball. He's not interested in here at all. If you think about it, he goes in and takes that player. We open the door then for another player to come in and start to contest our ball. So he's just really clean in on that. Okay, nice working height.
Inside the 20.
Okay, we end up in that nice, strong shape above the ball. Hands to the ground, but reloads them really quickly to show a really positive picture. Okay, we've denied the contest. Really good bullet, really good working height.
2.
Looking here now at where there is contest, where there is people around the ball. So we look here at the bullet. Okay, having to really accelerate into. I'll go back on that. Okay, recognising the threat straight away. First arriver, second arriver. So as we go through here, really needs to move that body straight away. Clears the threat. Well, then we have our ball coming in on a nice, strong situation. So we get to that situation and you look at where we are. We're 62 minutes into the game, chasing the game a little bit. As you saw in those first couple of clips, Crusaders really good at denying the contest at the breakdown. So you get a situation where we start to get a bit frustrated. Okay, and we start to look now at counter-rucking. Okay, now obviously there's a good picture there to counter-ruck because the halfback's being knocked out of the way. So there's a nice picture there for the opposition to see to counter-ruck. But again, a really strong shape in our ball, okay, allows the Crusaders on this instance to protect the ball.
Shannon, just on some of those clips, how important is it to get that depth of support behind the ball rather than coming in from a lateral position? You know, a lot of the Crusaders' footage and even Dempsey's footage, you know, the first movement is in behind that ball. You know, what are some of the benefits of that as opposed to support players staying more lateral?
Yeah, I think you've sort of nailed it there in relation to one of the key areas of our training. You know, the worst thing you can do within your breakdown training work is not make it realistic. So getting in a single file and following directly behind the ball is not realistic because in games you end up quite lateral. And the reality is, whatever attacking shape you've got, you need to be an option at the line. So the key is you're going to show a picture where you've got lateral support and the stock standard phase shape off 9, 3 forwards. You hit the guy in the middle. He's got inside and he's got an outside. It's stock standard around the world at the moment. So, you know, how do we go from being support players for ball in hand to manipulate defenders so we get one-on-one shots to being in exactly as you just said there in a nice position on that 45 and in his back pocket to be effective on his bullet clean. That's training. You know, that's putting you into that situation so that you have that ability to react quicker than your opposition. You know, and a lot of that's good reaction. You know, you're at the front line for a tip on, for an inside ball, and then all of a sudden you've got to recognise those cues really easy and really quickly that you can adjust so subtly, but effectively to be now in a position of effective clean out. You know, and that's a major component to training in training in the conditions that you are going to be in a game. So, you know, and I'll come to it later, but that's attaching your attack stuff to your breakdown session. You know, I'm not trying to work in isolation, you know, making sure that you get that. There's a lot of instances that you see where guys miss the mark. And I've got a couple of clips coming up where guys actually miss the mark in reacting. And they're those moments there where you do see those jackal opportunities and opposition getting in on the ball. And again, it's just as important for them to see the picture really quickly and look at when they can go for ball and when they can't. So again, it's that battle between obviously, you know, attack and defence, ball carrier and tackler, arriver and arriver, you know, and who's going to have the quickest reaction and the most effective action, you know. So I think it's one more here. Again, we see There's a reaction. We've obviously, we're a little lateral on this one, but there is still an effective bullet. Okay, and then we come in and we have a nice strong ball. Okay, in a position. I'll go back on that. It might have been a bit blurry. We just see here again. You see Jed coming in from an outside. He's in a lateral carry tip position, to having to adjust, be effective in his bullet clean, in moving that threat from above the ball. And then you see Mark coming in there on a nice strong shape for ball, giving us nice clean possession. Okay, so some really good work there. 2 men, ball carrier +2, a really nice and a really strong option. We just jump out. We'll flip now to our defence. Okay, and we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more holistically when we talk about our training. But putting the other hat on now, we've just talked as an attack coach. Now we'll talk as a defensive coach. Looking at our tackle contest roles within the defence. Again, first arriver has to make decisions. There's got to be an effectiveness of our first arriver. And then second and third arrivers will be a little bit more around our strategy. And it could be based on zone. It could be based on channel. It could be based on opposition or our own strengths, or where the point of collision is in relation to the previous ruck. There's some really simple things here. First arriving player, and this could be the tackler. So one thing just to be aware of there, we want our tacklers reloading and being effective with that breakdown. So we can get tackler +1 to do the role of 3. Make the tackle first arriver and second arriver. So we get 2 players cover 3 roles. That's not always the case. Tacklers get trapped underneath sometimes, and they're not in a position to be effective. So you'll then get your first and second arriver. Ultimately, the decision's got to be made pretty quick on this. So first arriver, whether it's a tackler or not, okay, makes a decision whether he's going to contest the ball. Okay, so what is he seeing? What are the cues? What's the picture of the opposition that's going to force his hand to try to contest that ball? If he's seeing things that are windows that are closed, if you're seeing early latches on and that picture's not there, then okay, what's the next role that he can play? Now, he might be a top 5 forward, and we've got a little winger that's decided to go in there on the latch, and he's sitting there all by himself as the arriver gets in. Says, okay, what's my role now? Okay, I'm not going to jackal the ball. So now what I want to do is I want to turn this ruck from a 2 second to 3 second, 4 second, 5 second, 6 second, so that we can now reset our defensive line. So the second role becomes what I refer to here as a soldier, and that's a player that's just going to push through that and try to get in that space above the ball. He's not interested in touching it with his hands, but he's just looking to get in there into that space and change the shape of the opposition attack to either get rid of him, putting another player into that collision, into that contest, or potentially just slow up their ball, which is going to give us meters in our defensive line.
Shannon, just to clarify, the term you used, closed windows, for coaches that may not be familiar with that, what does that look like in terms of the position of the support player for the attack? What's closed versus open? Yeah, so
closed windows is players that have got in and there's no space between the first arriving attacker and the ball. So you're looking in that really strong shape over the ball. We've highlighted on a couple of those clips before, wide base, chest down, closing off any kind of space for a jackler to get his head and arms in and get his body in there. So that really strong shape over the ball. Ultimately, within the laws of the game, we need to make sure that player is holding his own weight. So he's not as if he's sealed off and he's on his forearms, but he's got to be in that nice, strong, low shape, really closing chest down over ball, potentially high hips, and a nice wide base with some sort of a little bit of leg bend to absorb some of the hit. So then just a role, I've just put it into 3 roles there: jackal, soldier, reload. Okay, so the jackal, pretty common term, is looking at the guy that's going to enter that situation with an intent to pilfer the ball. Okay, so he straight away is, what does he require? He requires speed into that space because there's going to be arriving attackers there pretty quick. He's got to have speed into that space. So with speed comes an early decision. So again, that's that looking at the knowledge. What picture am I seeing? What are the cues? What are the things that I need to know about that are going to indicate why I'm going to get in there? So speed into the space above the ball. Need to have a stability to withstand a clean out. Okay, so there's no point being quick in there on one leg. There's no point being quick in there with a narrow base because you've got to survive a clean out. And then the last one is the role is about it having a real intent to lift the ball. You know, and I've just sort of summed up there, I guess. Put the whistle around the neck, and that's exactly what referees are looking for. They're looking for are you in a strong position? Are you able to withstand the clean out? Okay, and are you intending to lift the ball, or are you just trying to lock over the top? So it's we're in parallel, I guess, with what the referees are looking for in relation to how we should be coaching that player. Speed, stability, intent. Okay, three really key terms for the role of the jackler. The dog going on in the background there.
Someone disagreeing with your terminology, mate.
Little Jack Russell Feisty. Seen a bird, I guess. If a player's attempting to jackal the ball, okay, what we might see, and I've got a couple of clips, what you might see there is then is arriving players then looking to just hold him in there, okay, as a second player. What is he doing to help the jackler survive clean? What is he doing to help the jackler steal that ball? So lock him in, plug him in, whatever it is that there's a technique and there's there's a role there within the tactics of the game to focus on. The second one there, if we don't see a space there to jackal at the ball, we can look to just soldier. I'm losing it here with this dog. We can look to soldier, and what that just looks like is to say, hey, I'm not going to give you a free ruck. I'm actually going to try to get you to send another player in, and you probably look to soldier when it's a one man there, when it's a single player trying to sit over the ball, and then you've got to make those decisions as to say, you know, a calculated, educated decision. Can I affect this in a positive way, or am I just taking a man out of the defensive line? You know, it might be a jackler who misses the mark early and he's already in that contest. Well, his next role might become just a soldier. And that's just to push right through. Again, it's going to require a really strong working height. Okay, so it's a nice low. You really got to get underneath the arriving players there and be in a real attacking frame of mind. Physical to dominate the space and the space beyond the ball. That's your intent. You're not looking to get to the ball because you're not pilfering anymore. You're looking to go right through and get past the ball. And then a stability to stay on your feet, so you're not bringing refs into the game for getting into their side of the ball and falling over. So a real strong body height, a nice physicality to win the space at and beyond the ball, and then stability to take ref out of the game and to be effective in that area.
And I guess with that is the decision making in that is key, because there's no point sending soldiers in there if they don't have any impact, and we just
that's right.
More people out of the defensive line, which, you know, I see a lot of players put their head down and think, oh, I've had an involvement here, but they don't actually have any impact on the ruck.
Absolutely, and we've only got a finite amount of players. So if you put a player somewhere that's not effective, it means that we're also weak somewhere else. So, you know, with a defensive hat on, it's important that we make some really smart choices there. A soldier fighting through can buy us time to build length in our line. That's awesome. But sometimes a soldier getting in and not being effective, okay, and just bearing your head, okay, just takes a man out of the defensive line. So, again, it's all around what are we seeing, the decision we're making, what's it based on, okay, and how's it going to benefit our team? You know, and again, that's players won't make consistent, smart choices in this unless it's replicated in training. You know, unless that's the environment that they're working in. You know, Sunday through to Friday. The last role there, I guess, is what we saw a little bit on the clips, on the first set of clips, is just that reload back into the defensive line quickly. So, you know, it requires speed. Okay, obviously you need to get into that defensive line to be a number. Okay, and if you're a number in the defensive line, it allows us to now have a little bit more length. If we can have length in our line, you know, the ripple effect of that, it gives us courage now to get off the line a lot quicker. so we don't have to have that soft edge, and giving space for oppositions to get to. We don't have to be really passive. We can race off the line with a lot more intent, and apply pressure in our D line if we've got more numbers. So sometimes the strategy might be around get in the defensive line, get our length so we can get off the line, and that might, little simple things we'll talk from a strategy perspective. That might be when you're defending in your own 22. You need length in your line to come up to get off the line. You may not want to be burying heads into rucks. Get in there, get a nice good shot on, get someone jackling everyone else. Let's get in the line quickly. It's our red zone. We want to get off the line quite quickly and put pressure on. But again, what you do when you reposition, that's going to be a defensive system based. Whether you're getting out and you're locking in right next to the ruck, are you returning to short sides? Are you working out to edges? That's going to be based on defensively what you're trying to do with your system, and that's part of the creative license of coaches. Everyone does it slightly differently, and I think that's really important. But the role of jackal, soldier, and reload going to be pretty consistent across all game styles. I'll go chuck some defensive clips on now. Dog settled down, which is good. So we'll move through it. So just a couple here. Got these clear. I'll go in slow on these. So again, looking here, we look at Robbie Abel on this. Okay, this time on this instance here, we haven't got that early arrival by the Crusaders. So we look at Robbie Abel here. Sees a nice picture with that ball basically at his feet and says, "Okay, this is an opportunity for me to get quickly into that space," which he does. You see him get it nice and quickly into that space. Okay, he's in a strong position, gets himself a nice strong position. Okay, and then you look at here and you say hands on the ball, gives us nice intent, shows a good picture to the ref. Okay, and he's in a nice position there to steal the ball. Okay, survives the clean, good stability. Okay, and we go and a great outcome. So really good. Saw the picture, got in early, nice, strong, good intent to lift the ball, a really strong jackal shape. I'll show you a little bit different one. Again, on Robbie Abel again on this one. Again, sees the picture. Okay, obviously we've got some really, from a ball carry perspective, we've got some really good fight on the ground there. Just moving that little bit further on the ground, which just buys half a second. And I know I'm not getting into the ball carrier and tackler in relation to the effect on a tackle contest, but you just do see within this one here, just that extra second that he moves on the ground buys that critical second for the first arriving attacker. Okay, even still, he's seen a nice picture. Okay, he's gone in. The one difference we see on this, okay, is then that instability. Okay, so you look at that picture there straight away. Okay, and we know there that we've got to have an intent to lift the ball. The moment there, it's forearms on the ground. Yes, we're in a strong position, okay, but then intent to lift that ball, we're more just locked over and sitting over the top of it, okay, so he doesn't get rights to that. So the decision to get in there, good. The ball carrier on the ground made it difficult by that extra 6 inches of movement, okay, and it just took his ability to take that ball away, and he had to go into more of a brace position, so he doesn't get to the rights to it. So it can be that fine, but it's important that we're training these environments. Another one here, good jackal speed on this. Again, no arriving players in that space early. So we see here probably some really good shielding going on in around there to block guys. Okay, but no one in around, and we just see a really clean picture there for first arriving player to jackal. Okay, we don't want to be soldiering in that instance, and there's no point reloading. So that's a really clean picture to say I'm going to steal at that ball. Okay, there's a real intent to lift it. Okay, you can see hands are in on that ball. There's a real intent to lift it. And probably a first example there of saying what our arriving player, what we referred to before as a lock and a plug, just looking at that as a really clean example. Okay, just helping out where he can by just resisting and providing some more stability so that it gets to a situation where they get the win on that. Okay. It's going to be a penalty
correction. So just conscious of time, I thought we might go to a few questions from some of the coaches that are sent in.
Yep. Yeah. Good.
That might take us to maybe some training stuff as well.
Yep.
There's one from Adam at the Northern Barbarians in Pennant Hills, which is actually my old club, Old Beecroft.
Nice shout out there, Greg.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad I recognised it with the name change. What would be your advice on the intensity of training for contact area at breakdown? So obviously for coaches that are at different levels, what intensity do you train breakdown at? Is it always the same? Is it always full noise, or does it go all the way from kind of non-contact all the way up to full contact?
No, look, I think you've got to get to full contact and you've got to get to game situation, but I think through any skill development, there's got to be learning phases. So, there's going to be moments there where you have to take some of the intensity out. You have to take some of the contact out and some of the decision-making out to allow us to rep some of our technical actions. So I think that's the first point. Is there's going to be a bit of a balance between the two, and that might be skill-based. Certain players need a little bit more refined skill work with less pressure, or it might be beginning of programs, introducing different concepts and stuff that we start to get that right before we start to build the pressure in. I think what's really important is that we do get to the situation of game-like training in around our breakdown for two things. One, for our decision-making and our vision and decision-making, which at the end of the day is one of the most crucial components to it. Getting that right and just replicating as many of those as we can through our week. Could be 5 minutes on a Tuesday, but consistently over a season, you're providing the players a lot of opportunity to master their craft. Or it could be in a big block, in around with your team stuff. So when you're doing your team stuff, don't ignore the contest. Don't just play from ball out of ruck from ruck to ruck, which a lot of coaches can get stuck doing. Make sure that becomes a meaningful element to your 15 on 15 too.
And that kind of leads into another question from Andrew on the South Coast, which is, do you integrate tackle contest into each week, or do you block it? Do you think it's important to have an element in each week, or can you go a couple of weeks without doing it, and what's the impact if you do?
No, look, it's the most repeated area of the game, and I think for a number of things, you need to hit it every week. There needs to be a hit on it every single week. Certain weeks, if you're going from tough game to tough game, if you've got shorter turnarounds, well, that might be a smaller block. If you've got longer turnarounds, you're going from an easy game to a harder, or harder to an easier. You might have the capacity to draw that out a bit. But I think what it does is it puts an element of importance on it as well. That you're not just scooting through your week, focusing on all your starter plays or your line out and your 15 on 15 patterns. It puts a real element on the most repeated area of the game, and ultimately it's one of the major areas of the game that's going to decide the outcome. Having the ability to retain your own ball and play quick football is going to put pressure. It's going to lead to points. And defensively, if you've got the capacity to apply pressure at the contest and get some ball back, well, it means you can be a little bit more expansive with the ball because you've got a confidence in your defence and your defensive breakdown that you can actually get that ball back. So I think it puts a really importance on it. So I think the players need to be able to hit on that every week for sure.
And statistically, taking our old mates, our wingers out, statistically it'd be up there for the highest activity count for all players during a game, wouldn't it, in terms of clean out or breakdown involvements?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, it's the most repeated area. I mean, you're going to get certain elements of your game where passing is your nines passing are going to do more than anything else. Your tight five are going to have a real importance on their scrummaging and their set piece. That's a massive area of the game that they need to get right. There's going to be kicking elements, but generally speaking, from 1 to 15, the way the game is being played now, when we are seeing a lot more expansive attack, the way the game's being played now, balls are hitting edge of channels a lot more frequently. So even our finishers, even our wingers, are hitting a ruck or two. And it's pretty important because they can be the channels where players are a little more isolated. They're the channels where speed's involved. So timing of support can be increased. In close to the ruck, you got a bloke a metre away from you. You hit an edge, you've got a bloke that's 7 or 8 metres away from you. So you've obviously got there's more opportunity there if you're ineffective to win ball. So I think, absolutely. How you train that, obviously you want to train it in the environment that they're going to compete. You don't need wingers in it, pick and go defence, every week. obviously they need to know about it. And in around that close contest, you want to put them in their environments they're going to be in more frequently, because you do only have a finite amount of minutes on a weekly training base.
And mate, just kind of wrapping up, as I get used to recording on the limited time frame of our Zoom account. Have you got any final kind of tips, or is there anything that you want to pass on before we wrap up, mate, that you think's important for coaches out there around the tackle contest?
Yeah, probably 2 points is one, and I just made the comment a minute ago, is don't miss the opportunity to have really positive behaviours in your tackle contest on both sides of the ball when you're doing big picture stuff. And even if you're going through a period of non-contact or just body in front, really make a focus on what the actions are of those players there. They're not coming in hands on knees at the ruck just to replicate that I'm in this ruck at this phase, because every effort is a chance to get better, but also every effort is a chance to develop poor behaviours. So one would be really have a strong focus on that area of the game when you're doing big picture stuff. And while you're doing that big picture stuff, be comfortable for it to look a little messy. So to be comfortable to have a few little turnovers there. If you're doing body in front and the support is slow, allow that player to steal the ball, occasionally. That'll sort of sharpen things up a little bit. You might end up with your first grade, second grade kind of, let's go at 70%, ripping into each other. But I think what that does is it promotes a really healthy appetite towards that contest area, as opposed to just the plays that occur between the contests. The last point I'll make on that is just is focus on focus on yourself more than anyone. Get your game right in relation to the tackle contest, rather than getting too caught up in worrying about the opposition. It's probably a standard comment, I guess, across the board for coaching. Develop your tackle contest strategy based on your profile. How do you play? What's important to you? What are the strengths of your team? And develop a really good strategy to that, and leave the opposition worrying about what they do and think, oh no, we need to send 4 into the breakdown on our edges because the opposition do this. If we're good at what we do, and we're really clean at what we do, and we're effective, we just focus on what we do, and we get better at it every week. Yeah,
great advice, mate. And I think you've done a really good job of articulating the both attack and defence. And like you mentioned, there's other elements to it, like the tackle and the ball carry, and they all work together. But a big part of coaching is breaking it down into those smaller bits, understanding those bits intricately, and then you start building things back up. So I'm sure all of our coaches will have got a lot out of tonight, mate. So I want to thank you for your time. I know it's been an interesting week for rugby, but hopefully we can get out there and keep supporting our communities and our coaches, particularly both volunteer and aspirational.
Yep.
It's been a great way to start. So thanks, mate.
No, absolute pleasure. And like I said at the start, it's important that you talk footy. In these times, obviously we talk about mental health and connecting with people. That's obviously this is one way to do it, within your clubs, within your schools, talk footy, have a phone call, have a little hookup. And I think it's an opportunity that we don't normally get in a week. We're normally too busy trying to plan a session, select players, drop players, that we miss the opportunity to engage on a rugby conversation. So now's a really good opportunity to do that, and bring your players into that as well, because we want players who are curious. We want players who want to seek answers, and they also want to contribute. So bring your players into some conversations during this period too.
Awesome. Great advice, mate. We'll finish on that. Thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Look forward to the next session where we'll be hopefully up early next week with, I think, Cronny. All good.
Good.
Thanks, mate.
All right. Thanks, Greg.